Today we are going to be talking about the Pythagorean theorem. So, first of all, why would we use the Pythagorean theorem? So, we use the Pythagorean theorem to find a side length of a right angle triangle. Okay? And we know that it's a right angle triangle if it has this little box in one of the corners. This is telling us that it is a right angle or 90 degrees. Okay? And this is very important because it helps us identify one of the very key sides of a triangle, and that is the hypotenuse. Oops. So the hypotenuse is the longest side of a triangle, and how we find it is we identify our right angle, and we draw an arrow all the way to the other side from that angle, from that right angle. This arrow right here is pointing to the longest side in our triangle, the hypotenuse. So what is the equation for the Pythagorean theorem? So the Pythagorean theorem is I'm gonna do that in black actually, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But what does this mean? So c squared right here is always going to be our hypotenuse. And again, our hypotenuse is our longest side. Now this a squared and our b squared, these are simply our other two sides of our triangle. And they could be either one. I could call this side A and this side B, or I could call this side, I could call this side A and this side B. It really does not matter. A and B can be flipped around. Okay, so I'm going to call this A side 1 and B side 2. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and side 1 plus side 2 equals hypotenuse. And I'm actually going to square these because we want it to be the same as our equation. Now, if you've never seen these squares, that's an exponent. And what an exponent does is like saying a number times a number. So if one of my side lengths was 2 centimeters, this is like saying 2 squared. Okay, now let me show you this with an example. Okay, so this question is asking us to find how long this side length is right here, because it has a question mark. It's asking us how long is this side, and we can find that out through the Pythagorean theorem. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to label all of my sides. So we're going to start with A. I'm actually going to make that green with A. So let's call our 2. Let's call this side length A. Now remember, our side length A can either be 2 or 3. If you chose 3, that is A-okay, because as long as it's a side that's not the hypotenuse. Okay, now let's label side B. And I'm going to label side B as the side that is 3 centimeters long. And lastly, our hypotenuse. How do we find our hypotenuse? We find our right angle, draw a line all the way to the other side, and boom, there is our hypotenuse. Okay, so let us write down our equation. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And I'm just going to fill in the numbers that we know. I know that a, our green one, is equal to 2. I know that b is equal to 3, our yellow line. And we do not know c. So again, c is always our hypotenuse. So I'm going to call that c. I'm just going to keep it as c. Now, notice in the equation, we have these little squares right here. We have those little 2's. That means that we also have to put them into our equation. So 2, 2, and 2. Okay? So how I would go about this is I would first solve 2 squared. So 2 squared is like saying 2 times 2, which is 4. So I'm going to write down 4. Next is 3 squared, which is like saying 3 times 3, which I know is 9, equals, and then we still don't know c. Oops. Okay, so now I'm going to solve for what I do know. I know that 4 plus 9 is 13. So we're going to say 13 equals c squared. But how do I get rid of that squared? Because we're only looking for the value of c. We're not looking for the value of c squared. The opposite of a square is a square root. If you've never seen a square root, it looks like this. Okay? So I'm going to square root both sides. And I'm going to do that in purple. Okay? So I'm going to plug that into my calculator. I'm going to press the square root button and then 13. And I get, we're going to round it to 2 decimals. I get 3.61 equals c. So I know that our hypotenuse is 3.61 centimeters. Let's move on to the next equation. All right, let's try this example. So I'm actually going to start with labeling my hypotenuse. So let's do that. I'm going to find my right angle. I'm going to draw that line. And I know that this side is the hypotenuse, and it is the longest side. So this value, this hypotenuse is always going to be c. It doesn't matter which side a and b are, as long as they're not the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always going to be c. It cannot be a and it cannot be b. It's always going to be c. Okay, now let's label our side a. I'm going to label that one as 4. And side B, I'm going to label as our value that we don't know. And to help, I'll draw a question mark here. Okay, so let's find out the value of side B. How long is it? All right, let's write down our formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we'll plug in the values that we know. So I know that a is equal to 4 squared. B we don't know, so I'm just going to keep it as b. And c squared I know is 6 squared. So now this looks a little bit different than what we were used to, and that's okay. It just has one extra step. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to solve our squares. So 4 squared is like saying 4 times 4, which is 16. And we can't do b. And 6 squared is like saying 6 times 6, which is 36. Okay. So now when we were solving for the hypotenuse, we added together our a and our b. Obviously, we can't do that in this equation because we can't add 16 plus b. That would be weird. So what we have to do is we have to bring our 16 all the way over here. Okay? Now, 16 is a positive number, but see how it crosses over our equation sign? That is going to make our 16 negative. So instead of 36 plus 16, it's going to be 36 minus 16. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that over here. So we're going to have b squared equals 36 minus 16. Because again, our 16 was positive, it crossed the equation sign, or the equal sign, and turned negative. Same if I had, say this was minus b, if I brought it over here, that would be plus b now because it crossed the equal sign. So now we can subtract 16 from 36. So let's write that. B squared equals 36 minus 16 is 20. All right, so now what did we do last time to get rid of the square? Yes, we square rooted it. So we're going to draw in our little square root signs, and I'm going to plug that into my calculator. Square root of 20 is, and we're going to round it up to 2 decimals again. So I get b equals 4.72 meters. And make sure that, oh, sorry, not 4.72, 4.47 meters. And notice how I made sure to check my units. Here I have meters, which means that this one is also going to be meters. I also want you to notice something else. See how here I had b squared, but here I only wrote b? That's because this squared and this square root cancel each other out, and I'm left with only b. Let's try one more example. All right, we have this equation here. It reads, Miley wants to see how far up her 5-meter ladder can reach up her house's wall. How far can the ladder reach if it is placed 3 meters from the wall? So the first thing that we need to do is label our sides with the values that were given in the equation. So the first thing I see is her 5-meter ladder. And I also see if it is placed 3 meters from the wall. Okay, so her 5-meter ladder, that means that the ladder is 5 meters long. So 5 meters right here. And it says is placed 3 meters from the wall. So I know that this line is 3 meters, meaning I'm trying to find out how tall the wall is. And I could also see that in the equation when it says how far can the ladder reach. So I can see that it is the wall that we're finding. All right, so let's start this equation by writing out our formula. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's label our sides. So I can see that we have our right angle right here. So I'm going to draw a line from it until I hit the next line right here. So I know that this is our hypotenuse. Our hypotenuse is 5. So I'm going to write out my equation, or my formula. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And I know that c is equal to 5 squared. Okay? So let's color that in pink. Right there. All right, now let's find our a and b value. For a, I'm going to go with this 3 line. You could go with the unknown value, but you'll get the same answer. And for b, I'm going to go with the wall. All right. So let me write in my values. A, we said, was 3 squared, and b, we do not know, so I'm going to leave it as b. All right, so first step, let's solve our squares. So 3 squared is like saying 3 times 3, which is 9, plus b, because we cannot solve b, so b squared equals, and then 5 times 5, which is 25. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need to bring our 9 over to this side, and it is going to become a negative because right now it is positive. And I know that it's positive because it doesn't have any sign in front of it. It doesn't have a negative sign, so I know that it's not negative. So I know it's going to turn into a negative sign once it crosses our equal sign. So let me rewrite our equation. We're going to get b squared equals 25 minus 9. All right, so let me solve that. B squared equals 25 minus 9, which is 16. And to get rid of our square, I'm going to square root both sides, because whatever you do to one side, you always, always, always have to do it to the other side as well. So for my answer, I'm going to get b equals 4, because the square root of 16 is 4, and that is in meters. So a very important thing when you're solving word equations is that you always have to write a therefore statement. Now, the short form symbol for therefore is just 3 dots. That looks like that. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to write therefore, I'm going to erase this so I have my room. If Miley's ladder is 5 meters and is placed 3 meters from the wall. Oops. 5 meters and is placed from the wall. Yeah, so if Miley's ladder is 5 meters and is placed 3 meters from the wall, it can reach up to 4 meters. All right, and that is how we solve that word equation. All right, that is it for today's Pythagorean theorem video. I really hope that this was helpful and you enjoyed it. I hope everyone has an amazing day, and if you would consider liking and subscribing to grow my channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Have an amazing day, everybody. Bye!